Hello. I want to let you know why I am starting a YouTube channel. I started my first business in 2018. I decided, all right, it's time. I want to be a coach. I want to help people. There's way too many people suffering in shitty jobs, shitty relationships, overwhelming circumstances. And the number one thing I saw over my 5-year tenure working with clients, whether they were the wealthiest folks on the planet to folks that were not so wealthy, one thing they had in common was the fear of taking action. And we all have this. This is age old. I didn't come up with this. Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich. He talks about it in Outwitting the Devil. The Richest Man in Babylon, he talks about it. There are so many texts that speak of this inaction that we humans get consumed by. This YouTube channel was in action for 5 years. I posted videos consistently on Instagram, but I didn't put anything on YouTube because I didn't have the gear, and then I bought the gear, and then the gear looked really complicated to use. And then what about the lighting? And then I bought a ring light, and then the ring light broke. And then I bought some adapters, and then one of the adapters didn't work. And I was like, this is just too hard. Like, I'm just not going to do this. Yet I stopped myself from starting for the longest time because inaction is kind of easy, but it's not. And I speak a lot about what I call cheap and expensive dopamine. And this is going a little off topic, but hear me out. Cheap and expensive dopamine means cheap dopamine is Netflix, porn, scrolling, eating, chocolate, sugar after 9 or 10 p.m., smoking cigarettes, smoking weed to go to sleep. Like, these are all cheap dopamine hits, but they're expensive because they cost us in the long run. And I waited 5 years to create this channel. 5 years. I wasn't really thinking about it because I made a really great life for myself and business through investments and a multi-six-figure business in coaching, that YouTube just fell to the back burner. I've been in deep contemplation in the last 18 months, and I want to reach more people to help them take messy action and to stop opting for that cheap dopamine that's actually really fucking expensive. And I, in particular, am best equipped to help entrepreneurial women. And I call these entrepreneurial women swans. Are you familiar with the ugly duckling story? It doesn't matter if you're not, I'm going to explain it anyway. In one of my favorite books of all time, Women Who Run with the Wolves, there is a story in this book around the ugly duckling. The duckling, for the longest time, is battered and bruised and beaten and neglected and left out and made fun of, and truly thinks that it's worthless and ugly and doesn't belong. For so many of us as entrepreneurs, we can relate to this ugly duckling story. We are constantly surrounded by folks that don't get it. They don't know why the fuck you'd go out on this business venture and start something yourself, or why you'd go off and be obsessed with some idea that you had to bring to life. Other people don't understand the level of risk that you will take in order to go for these things, or in order to do this thing that feels impossible or looks impossible, not only to other people, but also to yourself at the time. What happens to the ugly duckling in time after stumbling and falling? Eventually it realizes that it's a swan. It doesn't realize that it's a swan because it looks in the mirror and goes, oh my gosh, I look different to all of those other ducks. What it does is it's wandering one day, feeling helpless and alone, and it sees these beautiful creatures on a pond. And these beautiful creatures are moving with grace. They've got these long necks. They've got these characteristics that this little duckling has never seen before. And it's the age-old saying around if you judge a fish by its ability to breathe, or if you judge a fish by its something around swimming in water or not swimming in water, or no, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, right? Fish can't climb trees. So swans and ducks are different. So what happens is this ugly duckling sees these beautiful creatures and goes, wow, that's so beautiful. And they welcome the ugly duckling over, because to them, the ugly duckling looks exactly like them. Yet the ugly duckling's going, me? They're probably just going to humiliate me or embarrass me or tell me that I'm ugly. Yet what the ugly duckling didn't know is that all along it was a swan. This story resonated with me so much. It literally makes me want to cry. That I knew that I had to get over all of my resistance and all the things that were stopping me from creating a YouTube channel and go, there are so many swans, in particular women, out there that are carving their own path, or at the very least have dreams to carve their own path. They're craving financial independence, so they don't need to rely on anybody else in order to have money and to sustain themselves and their families if they have families. And I'm here for those that identify as swans, those that don't want to do what society has set out for them. They don't want to live in the matrix. They don't want to spend the rest of their lives working for someone else that has created a ceiling for them in regards to income, in regards to what they can do for themselves. I also realized pretty quickly over the 5 years of coaching a lot of women and men from all walks of life that everyone has the same fears and the same desires. And the biggest thing that stops people from starting is a lack of support and feeling lonely. And feeling lonely within their own relationships, feeling lonely within friendships, and especially feeling lonely in intimacy if they do have a significant other. My number one thing for the 5 years that I was in business was, where the fuck are my people? Where are my swans? Like, why am I constantly surrounded by ducks? I know that we eat similar food and we can all cruise along the lake together, and you know, we have wings and we're pretty similar. We're birds, we're of the same sort of species, but ultimately I am not a duck. I realized that it takes time to uncover who you really are, what you really want, and where you're really going, okay? And then when you begin to just move in those directions, that is when the odd swan appears and you're like, holy shit, you're a swan like me. Where did you come from? I've been looking for you forever. Yet when we keep hanging out in the duck pond, so to speak, there are no swans to be found. And that's the part that is so frustrating. You're like, where are these people? So for the longest time when I was building my business from scratch, from zero, I knew that I couldn't afford to be around ducks. Not purely monetary or financial, but because of my energy. I didn't want to drink alcohol. I didn't want to go out partying. I didn't want to escape. I was hyper-focused on wanting to create wealth for myself. I wanted to be of service and help people live better lives, have more nourishing relationships, connect to God, to source, to themselves, to the universe, to nature, to all the things that feel so good outside of consumption and gluttony and the matrix. So I spent 90% of my time alone, and my mum was so concerned about me, and my friends were like, Brooke, are you sure? Like, you spend so much time alone, this can't be healthy. But all I knew was that I couldn't hang out with all of those ducks anymore. I couldn't be around ducks that were employed. I couldn't be around people that wanted to get really fucked up and drink a ton and escape and just work their 9-to-5 job, or stay in corporate and moan about their boss, or moan about the situation going on at work. Like, I couldn't do that. I couldn't be around people in miserable relationships that moaned and moaned and moaned and never did anything about it. So my tool in those moments was to surround myself. We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, apparently. Well, I spent a lot of time with Tim Ferriss. And then from there, I would spend a lot of time with the people on Tim Ferriss's show. So then it would be the likes of Gabor Mate, and at the time, Brené Brown. And then I discovered Women Who Run With the Wolves. And then I discovered Seth Godin and Tony Robbins, and the list goes on. And all of these people had a definite purpose, as Napoleon Hill would say, who wrote Outwitting the Devil and he also wrote Think and Grow Rich. I knew that I needed to be around these minds and consumed by these minds in order to clean up my own mind and clean up my own being, because anytime I was hanging around the ducks, as I'll call them, I found myself depleted. And it was because I wasn't a duck and I could not get energy from these ducks because I've always been a swan. And even before I knew any of this, even before I decided to start my own business, I always had this nagging feeling of like, you aren't like these people. You don't want what they want. You aren't motivated by what they're motivated by. There's a depth within you that you cannot communicate to these people. And what I found out along the way was that depth was actually a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, and a lot of suffering that had gone on in my earlier years that I actually couldn't really relate to people that were ducks because I had suffered so much. Everyone suffers in life. No one gets away in this human experience without suffering. But it is true that some scales and some levels of suffering are a lot fucking more intense than others, right? So this is what makes life that much richer when you find your people, or you see those fellow swans and they are cruising along the lake and you're a little apprehensive because you're like, what if they're not for me either? And then they welcome you in and everything else changes. So this YouTube channel is truly devoted to entrepreneurial women that want to find their swan tribe, their swan school, their swan flock, whatever you want to call it. And it's for those that no longer want to do things alone because they're just constantly defeated by all of the ducks in society. And it's for those that want to combat the loneliness felt, the deep loneliness felt by not feeling like you belong anywhere. And it's also for those that have two key drivers. And those two key drivers or two key motivators have always been freedom and connection. And I love to articulate this connection piece in particular. I believe there are two types of people in the world. The first is the connection-driven person, the one with genuine curiosity that loves humans, that wants to know and understand them and wants to genuinely be around them because there's a deep reciprocity around energy and giving and receiving, and it just feels good. It's like a symbiosis. And then there's the second person, and that's the one that is agenda-driven. And we can all feel if someone's agenda-driven. Think about someone outside of the supermarket or grocery store that's like, hey, can you donate to this non-profit organization or this charity? They have an agenda. They're not trying to connect with you. They're trying to get something from you. And sure, it might be an amazing charity and you might donate, and that's fine. But also this translates to someone that wants to talk to you for your expertise. This translates to someone that wants to take or get something from you. My number one thing when it comes to swans is they're typically driven by connection first and foremost. At the end of the day, they know that connection is actually the gateway to freedom. Connection is what sustains us. Connection to ourselves and also connection to other swans and other people that have compassion, love, generosity, openness, receptivity at the forefront of their very being. And there's nothing worse when you're trying to connect with someone and they are judging you, or they're disconnected, or they're not listening, or they're not there with you present time. Many of you watching this would have done the love languages test and tried to figure out, well, what is my love language? I know for me, my number one love language is quality time. So if I'm spending time with someone and they're distracted and they're on their phone and they're not listening or asking me to repeat myself or saying, oh, sorry, like, I just need to take this, I'll be with you in a second. That feels like loneliness to me. That feels like disrespect to me purely because of my love language. And their love language might be gifts. So they might not care if I was on my phone. They might not care if I was distracted and not really listening to them. But ultimately, I think we as humans know when something feels like home and something feels really great and something feels like someone wants to take something from me, or this doesn't feel like a reciprocity. I'm going to teach you everything that I know, everything that I have learned in my entire life, but more specifically in the last 5 years, building a coaching business centered around life coaching, relationship coaching, and helping other women become coaches, helping them understand what their true north is and what their zone of genius is, so they can go out into the world and help other people with that. Some women are obsessed with health and hormones. Some women are obsessed with relationships and relationship dynamics, which was me. Relationship to self, relationship to others is the vehicle for every amount of fulfillment and riches in your life. Other people are interested in getting fit and building muscle and understanding calories and macronutrients and micronutrients. What I know to be true is my dharma and my gift has always been helping people unlock what theirs is. I'm a catalyst, and I never really knew it until I coached all these people, and every time they would move into a new life. They would leave a relationship, they would leave a job, they would move cities, they would sell homes, they would quit things, they would break up with friends, they would set boundaries, they would manifest money that they never even knew was possible. And it was all because of the level of support that I provided. So then they could do what they always had within them. So I don't take any of the credit for their success. I just take credit for the fact that I was able to support them and hold their hand enough for them to go out and do the damn thing. That is why this channel and all of my work going forward is called Messy Action. MA, baby, Messy Action. If you let yourself get messy and take action, clarity follows suit. I even created an entire framework around this because every client I ever worked with went through this exact same thing. They would be in what I call the infinity loop of self-destruction. And the infinity loop of self-destruction starts with overwhelm. So overwhelmed, so many options, not sure what to do. Everything seems like it's up against me and there's a block wall and I can't get through it. Overwhelm leads to anxiety. And anxiety is, I have too many options. Everything's imminent. I'm not doing anything. I feel stuck. I'm so fucking anxious that my nervous system is fried. And then when we're that anxious, it leads us into our unhealthy habits. Because the anxiety is too much. We feel like we're on the brink of something and we opt for the thing that is going to feel almost like connection. And that thing is food. That thing is smoking, drinking wine, drinking alcohol, scrolling, gaming, obsessing on YouTube, binge watching Netflix, shopping, restricting ourselves with calories, over-exercising, under-exercising. There are so many things that sneak on in when we feel fragile. And we feel fragile because we're not taking action. And it's not because you need to be productive. A lot of the times this is because of deep grief. We're in so much grief and pain from the death of a loved one or uncovering abuse, or we've had an actual physical injury that's left us feeling unable to be independent as much anymore until we heal. Like, all of these things lead us down the same road. So when we opt for the near connective behavior of choice, or the thing that we hope is going to give us some reprieve, it almost works. And we can't get enough of something that almost works. And so what ends up happening is we get down on ourselves when the high wears off, when the Netflix show is finished, or when the cigarette is finished, when the bottle of wine is done, or when the hangover incurs the next morning, or when we can't sleep because we've consumed way too much chocolate or dessert or sugar, or when we can't sleep because we've been on our phones and devices and televisions for so long that we've had so much blue light that we're way too alert and we're insomniacs. What happens next? Self-loathing. So we loathe, we go, I should have known better. What the fuck is wrong with me? Why can't I just figure this out? I'm such a piece of shit. Why can't I just stop eating chocolate? Or why am I always drinking? Okay, tomorrow I'll start from scratch and I won't do it anymore and I won't do it anymore. And we keep setting ourselves up for failure. So what do we do when we loathe, when we get so down on ourselves and we feel like shit? We get more overwhelmed. And so when we're more overwhelmed, what happens? We take less action because we have less clarity and we don't know where to fucking begin. And so then when we're more overwhelmed, we get anxious again and the loop continues, right? So we're overwhelmed, anxious, shitty behavior that makes us feel worse, self-loathing, overwhelmed, and we just go round and round and round. So I call that the infinity loop of self-destruction. I got one of my good friends, Marion Piper, who's a brilliant illustrator. She's one of my favorites ever. She actually brought my vision to life and illustrated it so incredibly well. When I coached all these people through their infinity loop of self-destruction, which by the way, everyone has it, like no one on this earth is immune. Everyone has their thing. Women, I find, is wine and chocolate. Men, I find, is porn or over-exercising. Like there are so many different things. What I realized was the only way that people got out of this infinity loop of self-destruction and into purpose was through support. So you'll see that with the hands and the illustration that Marion has created. And the hands and the support at the time was me. I was the one going, hey, you're not alone. We got this. Like, cool, you fell off the wagon. Let's get back on again. Not a big deal. I've got you. So what would happen is their self-loathing would turn into, wait a second. She's saying I'm not so bad after all. She's saying other people also have this problem too. Okay, I'll start again. And eventually we'd go through it over and over again to the point where people started taking messy action. Whether it was they wanted to write a letter to their spouse because eventually they were going to leave, or they were going to start their YouTube channel or their business, or they were going to write their resignation letter even though they weren't going to send it yet. Like there were all these little things where it was like, just begin. Like what is the tiniest, most atomic thing we can do to get started? James Clear, Atomic Habits, best book ever. I'll pop it in the description below. If you haven't read it, get into it over and over again. It's one of the best books you'll ever read. So with the support, we move into what I call the infinity loop of self-actualization. Part of that loop is what I've called this channel and what the rest of my work is going to be for the foreseeable future. Messy action, messy action, messy action, messy action. So when we've got the support, when we've got a person or a group of people or a podcast or a movement, like I had Tim Ferriss and Brené Brown and Tony Robbins and these people that I'd listen to, even though no one in my specific physical proximity was like, Brooke, you're crushing it. Like you can do this. You can get clients and make money and change lives. It was like, okay, well, if Tim Ferriss has done these things and then these guests on his show and then Tony Robbins and all these people that follow Tony Robbins, they've applied these financial principles to their life. I should apply it to mine. Over that time, I felt like those people were my people. They were swans. I just hadn't quite met them yet. But I was moving more toward what that archetype or what that person would do, what those swans would do. So with the infinity loop of self-actualization, what that is with support, we take messy action. It's messy. We're like, I don't have any clarity. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how this person is going to respond to me. I don't know whether I'll ever have any money ever again to pay my bills. I don't know anything outside of the fact that this one small messy action is the first step that I need to take. Okay, cool. So then what's next? Well, then we take that first step of messy action. We enter the cave, right? The one that Joseph Campbell talks about. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. We enter that cave. And before we know it, we've got an ounce of clarity. We're like, oh my God, that wasn't even so bad. Holy shit, I've been lied to my whole life. That taking action is the scariest thing on the planet and anxiety inducing, and that I'm basically going to die and the world's going to end. But I'm still here, and that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So then from that place, we get a bit of momentum. We're like, all right, what other messy action can I take? Because that was nowhere near as bad as the anticipatory anxiety that I'd built up in my mind. That mountain that I'd created that was actually a tiny little molehill doesn't exist. That was all a lie. What the fuck? So now that I've got this momentum, let's keep going. So this momentum then leads to motivation, because we've taken like one messy action step, and then we take another one, and then maybe if I try that one, it won't be so bad, and that one. And before you know it, we're taking so many little steps, we've got the momentum, we're now motivated. We're like, all right, I'm unstoppable now. Like, I've got all these steps under my belt, which is validating me. It's giving me confidence. So now that I have this level of confidence and I have this level of motivation, what next? Sense of accomplishment, success, feeling like I've got this. I can do this. A reignition of your spark. That spark that you once had that you felt dwindle out. Whether it was during the pandemic, whether it was a job loss, whether it was a business failure, whether it was you spent too much money, like we all had so many topsy-turvy moments during the pandemic. And then from that place, you just keep taking messy action. And I call this the infinity loop of self-actualization. Like, you will self-actualize, you will get everything you want in life, you will figure things out, everything will fall into place as it is meant to. If you, one, are supported, feel like you're part of something, find your swans. Number two, you're able to actually take that tiny, tiny, tiny little micro step of baby action. Messy, messy baby action. And if you keep doing that, you can't help but self-actualize. The only thing that ever stops you from success, and the only thing that ever stops you from making money, multiplying money, receiving money, earning money, creating wealth, investing, having loving, nourishing relationships, having a sense of confidence, authentic confidence, what stops you being authentic as yourself, is when you stop, is when you get stuck, is when you let the ego, Voldemort I like to call him, because he needs a host to survive. When you let that get in your way and you doubt your decision making, and then the doubt multiplies and it compounds over and over and over again. So that is why I'm starting this YouTube channel, because I want you to take more messy action. I want you to be wealthy. I want you to start a business. I want you to get out of the fucking matrix. I want you to make empowered decisions when it comes to your relationships with people, because you don't need anything from them. You want companionship, you want intimacy, you want love, but you're not so attracted to them because they have money. And you're not so attracted to them because they can offer you a level of security that you couldn't offer yourself. You're not so attracted to them because, oh, they're really good with kids and they tick all of these hypothetical boxes. You get to be in the driver's seat of your own life, and you get to be empowered. And on this channel, I'm going to be teaching you everything I've learned and everything I know about health, wealth, and relationships. And this channel is specifically for the swans, for the entrepreneurial woman that have a cause on their heart that they care about, and they care about humanity, and they care about making this world a better fucking place to live for ourselves and future generations and for our children. And it's for those women that want wild wealth. They want to make money, they want to receive money, they want to have money, and they want to have it multiply. And they want to create a future for themselves where they're not slaving away because they can't afford something or because nothing's working. They're doing it because they want to live a life of freedom and contribution. So remember at the beginning, I said the 2 factors for the person that's going to listen to this YouTube channel. Those 2 factors that those people embody, or characteristics, let's call it. Number 1, freedom. Number 2, connection. So if you're motivated by freedom, you're going to want to watch this channel because I'm going to teach you everything I know about getting free. I don't work for anyone else. I've never worked for anyone else for 5 years. I've bought assets over time. I have made money through my own knowledge, sharing on Instagram, selling to people in person, selling to people online, being of service, creating value. Like, I haven't been employed since October 2017, and I haven't needed anyone but my own drive and my own action taking in order to make a life for myself where I wake up every day and I do whatever I want, when I want, with whom I want. And that is what I want for you, because that is the ultimate freedom, and that is a place where your decisions are empowered and you can look after yourself more. I have all the time in the world to do what I want, to create this video in the middle of the day. I have time, and I want you to have time too. And so many people are going to be like, you're white and you have privilege and all these things. Sure. But I also made a choice that I didn't want to go down the conventional corporate route. I didn't want to keep hopping from one technology company to another feeling unfulfilled because I wasn't really in the driver's seat of my life. So if you're in the passenger seat right now, feeling kind of resentful, hating your job or hating your situation, or really disliking where you're at in your business even, just know that you can change and it can shift. It just takes support and it takes contemplation and reflection time. So on this YouTube channel, there's gonna be a lot of journal prompts. There's gonna be a lot of, hey, try this. I know it fucking works. And I want you guys to put in the comments all the things you want me to talk about as well. I've had so many failures. I spent way too much money in 2022 because I was so resentful of the pandemic and all the lockdowns that I experienced in both New Zealand and Melbourne that I fled to LA, and I was like, fuck it, let's just burn it to the ground. But I spent a lot of money. I slipped up on a lot of the things that I hold dear and a lot of the values that I hold dear. And I'm going to speak about a lot of those throughout this. So ultimately, the reason I have wisdom in certain areas is because I fucked up so badly in those certain areas and I've learned really harsh lessons. The reason I follow some people and the reason I respect those certain people is because they've also royally fucked up in so many areas and then learned from it, and then they share their wisdom, and I respect that and I can't wait to hear about it. I hope you join me on this journey. Our purpose is hidden within our wounds. Well, my biggest wound has always been my trauma and my not enoughness, and I'm unlovable, and the abuse that happened to me shaped me, and it's not true. Whenever I take any messy action toward something that feels heartfelt and it's something that I feel needs to be put out into the world, all of that self-doubt and self-hatred disappears. Self-loathing is multiplied through inaction. Self-love is multiplied through messy action. So I hope that you will join me on this journey and take some messy action with me. Please subscribe below and like this video and share it with anyone that needs to see it as well.